Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Mary Wiley-Smith, and I'm the Deputy Australian Public Service Commissioner. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We are meeting across 20 different sites today, and I acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands at each of these locations. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to all of you who are joining us for today's event through virtual means from locations here in Canberra, but also outside Canberra. I understand that we have 1,100 people watching this event today. So it's great to have you all with us, and today is actually all about you. It's about HR practitioners in the Australian Public Service. And today is also the first of many, many networks that we're going to have with HR across the country in the year to come. It's also a pleasure that I acknowledge several of our special guests today. So firstly, I'd like to welcome Chris Jordan, the Commissioner of Taxation, Peter Wolcott, the Australian Public Service Commissioner, Michelle Brunage, the Secretary of the Department of Education, and Rob Heffron, who's Acting Secretary of the Department of Environment and Energy. Welcome. Today's event is a culmination of a collaborative effort across the Australian Public Service. So I'd also like to welcome members of the Deputy Secretary's Reference Group. The reference group worked to actually make today possible. So I'd like to actually acknowledge them. They're sitting in the front row here, and I know that you're going to meet them soon when we actually go to questions later on today's event. Jill Charker from the Department of Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business. Justine Gregg from the Department of Defence. Jackie Curtis from the Australian Taxation Office. Catherine Jones from the Department of Finance. And Neil Mason from the Department of Agriculture. I'd also like to acknowledge members of the reference group who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today. So Matt Yiannopoulos from the Department of Health and Roxanne Kelly from the Department of Human Services. As I mentioned, today is the culmination of a collaborative effort between departments and also senior executives from across the public service, all united in a desire to make a difference to the Australian Public Service. And the most practical and valuable way to do this is to build our collective HR capability, particularly in strategic HR, to work closely with our business areas and our executive to help lead and advise on organisational change. Now, I know you're all itching to get to the exciting part of the day, and in a moment, I will hand over to the Australian Public Service Commissioner to make some key announcements about the way forward for HR professionals in the public service. And we're also going to meet our new head of profession. And we're going to actually see the reference group in action. But first, some logistics and housekeeping. For those of you here in Canberra, you would have walked past the bathrooms on your way into the room. For guests in our other sites, you have site coordinators in your rooms who can guide you. In the event of an emergency, please follow the directions of your local fire wardens. When we confirmed your nomination to attend today, we asked you all to upload the Slido app on your mobile phones. If you haven't done that already, please take a moment to do that now. The instructions should be on the audio visual behind me here. While I ask that your mobile phones are on silent mode, please keep them close. We would like you to send through any questions or comments for your speakers and panel through the afternoon. So please do that using the Slido app. You will also see on the app that we are also asking you to nominate any topics of interest that you'd like to be made available for future HR network meetings. I would now like to invite Peter Wolcott, the Australian Public Service Commissioner, to make his address. Peter.
Thank you, Mary, and it's great to be here today to launch this much-needed public service-wide initiative. I'd like to begin by echoing Mary's acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, across all locations, and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, as you all know, the Australian Public Service is operating in an increasingly complex environment. The APS is facing the challenges of digital disruption and automation, globalisation and changing demographics, including a growing and ageing population and an evolution in how people want to participate in work and manage their careers. To continue to deliver the best service to the community, the APS needs the best minds and the most dedicated people. However, the APS is up against tough competition for talent from the private sector. Potential employees are looking for a dynamic, challenging and flexible work environment, and the APS will need to work hard to attract them. This is critical for the betterment of our workplaces and employees and the community we serve. To strengthen our effectiveness, we must ensure we are a public service that is capable, open, dynamic and flexible to change, and today is one part of the plan for how we will achieve this. You'll no doubt be aware the independent review of the Australian Public Service has recently been delivered to the Prime Minister. While the review has not yet been published, the interim report, Priorities for Change, highlighted the need for formal, focused professionalisation of all APS roles, drawing on international best practice. Several reviews of the APS over recent years have highlighted capability gaps across a number of professions, including strategic human resources management. This has led to why we're here today and to the work we're doing to establish a formal professions model in the APS with the aim of lifting in-house skills and expertise and providing rewarding public service careers. The Australian Public Service Commission has looked at what other governments overseas have learnt from implementing profession-based models such as in New Zealand, Singapore and the UK. In the UK, for example, when you join the civil service, you become part of a profession. Your profession offers networking opportunities, career routes, training and development programs. A formalised professions model has the advantage of being able to help define and support career paths for both generalists and specialists, providing opportunities that value expertise and management capability. However, a professions model also needs to be flexible, keeping in mind that what works for one profession may not work for another, and there should be scope to work across different professions. To do this, we have to build career paths for our core professions that create a common understanding of the skills and experience needed at each level and the opportunity to gain these in a structured way. So it is my pleasure to announce that we have developed an APS HR Professional stream strategy to further professionalise HR leadership and the HR workforce in the APS. This strategy will provide a systematic, service-wide approach to lifting strategic HR capability and attracting and retaining the best strategic HR talent available. The HR Professional stream strategy follows the key principles of growing capability, sharing knowledge and experience, and engaging via collaboration and voluntary activity. The strategy has been developed through consultation with an established reference group comprising senior deputy secretaries representing a range of APS agencies. The deputy secretaries who have guided this work are our special guests today and were introduced by Mary earlier. Many thanks go to all of you for your advice and help along the way to get us to this point, including providing people to lead the work. I would like to specifically acknowledge the early conceptual work undertaken by Deputy Secretary Jill Charker. It was Jill's early strategic thinking that was used as the foundation piece for evolving the strategy. I would also like to specifically acknowledge the ATO Commissioner, Chris Jordan, who generously provided resources to work at the Commission over the past few months, as well as generously hosting our event today. For anyone who's not aware, Commissioner Jordan is a strong advocate of strategic HR. He understands the value of his people and the importance of partnerships between business areas and HR to deliver outcomes and drive change. And I thank you again, Chris. Can I also thank the Secretaries Board for their strong support for this initiative. Now, the strategy includes initiatives that will help identify the core long-term capability needs, standards and career pathways to support HR professionals in the APS. It'll draw on public, private, domestic and international experience and best practice. The key signature initiatives of the strategy are the creation of an HR professional network, implementing an HR mobility program, developing a workforce strategy for HR professionals, improving the recruitment of HR specialists to the APS, and streamlining HR graduate recruitment. Today, we've launched the HR Professional Network, and I'm pleased this network is now up and running. The APS HR Professional Network brings you all together, HR employees from across agencies, to share your knowledge and experience. A monthly schedule of networking opportunities will be created so the HR Professional Network can come together regularly for collaborative learning. Masterclasses on topical issues will also be a key feature, as will a speaker series. Today, I'll also introduce to you the complementary online virtual HR network established on the GovTeams online channel. The online channel will provide resources and learning opportunities for all APS HR professionals. So, what are the next steps? Firstly, on mobility, the strategy outlines that we will create mobility opportunities for APS HR practitioners. These will include intra-agency and cross-agency secondments, as well as with external private sector providers and academia. These mobility opportunities will aim to provide a way for people to develop their individual capabilities, expand their knowledge and experience, and immerse themselves in diverse organisations and environments. People can then return to their home agencies with new perspectives and a diversity of views and ideas to share. This is the first time we're implementing a formal mobility program for a professional stream. We'll also be working to identify the professional HR standards and HR capabilities needed for strategic HR practitioners in the APS. Optional formal HR certification will be considered to ensure growth and retention of a professionalised workforce that is aligned to professional standards and broader future capability needs. At a senior leadership level, we would like to understand the profile of that cohort and develop a talent and succession management plan. There's a need in the APS for HR leaders to be exemplary role models for the wider HR workforce. As we move to address the expectations of government and the Australian community and the new challenges that face us in an increasingly connected world, the nature of what we need from strategic HR needs to broaden to include skills outside of traditional HR. Key needs include change leadership, design capability, commercial and business acumen, data analytics, behavioural economics, organisational psychology, and other broad credentials that partner with business to achieve pragmatic business outcomes. We've also co-designed a central HR graduate recruitment and development program for the APS, which will work on an opt-in basis. This will be coordinated and initially run with the ATO. As well as benefiting agencies in the wider APS, HR graduates will have a better candidate experience. For example, HR graduates will only need to apply once for any HR position in any APS agencies, and HR graduates only need to attend one assessment centre represented by all agencies that opt into this centralised model. Successful HR graduates will then participate in a whole of APS development program. The development program will run for 9 months, including rotational placements in different agencies, along with learning and development that will focus on strategic HR problem solving relating to complex business problems. The co-design of this initiative is bringing together different agency views and a diversity of thinking and ideas. Now, at the centre of the APS HR Professional Stream strategy is the appointment of an HR Head of Profession. The role of the HR Head of Profession is to champion strategic HR capability and strong collaboration across the APS. The HR Head of Profession will be rotated every 2 years between relevant senior executives at the Deputy Secretary level. This will share ownership across agencies and leverage the diversity of thinking over time. The responsibilities and accountabilities of the HR Head of Profession are distinct from those of agency heads. The Head of Profession will not have any formal authority over agency head decision-making. The Head of Profession will use influence and will assist and guide decision-makers to ensure HR strategists are actively engaged with business to deliver workforce capability improvements across the APS. This is not the only professional model that will be established. It is, however, the first. I will be a Head of Professions and have oversight across the APS of the various models and be the conduit to the Secretary's Board. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you the newly established HR Head of Profession, and that is Jackie Curtis. Jackie's current role is Chief Operating Officer at the Australian Taxation Office. In that role, Jackie leads the ATO's enterprise strategy and corporate operations functions. Jackie sits on the ATO executive, responsible for shaping and setting strategic direction and oversighting implementation. A significant part of her role is corporate positioning, change management and design of the 20,000-strong organisation that is primarily based outside of Canberra as a national business. In oversighting the people function, Jackie brings together an integrated picture of the people and resource management to ensure the ATO has the right capability and culture to meet its strategic intent. Prior to her current role, Jackie was Deputy Commissioner of the ATO's people function and led the Reinvention Program Management Office, leading change management and key reforms to improve the client and staff experience. Before then, Jackie held other HR functions in both the public and private sectors. She is a Fellow of the Australian Human Resource Institute and was appointed Adjunct Professor at the University of Canberra last year. Along with her Deputy Secretary colleagues on the reference group, Jackie has helped guide development of the HR Professional Stream Work Program. It is now my great pleasure to announce Jackie's appointment today and to introduce her to you. Please join me again in congratulating Jackie, and if I can invite him to the stage.
Wow, this is exciting. I'm delighted to be here today and particularly to see so many familiar faces here in Canberra. And I know many of the people that will be tuning in from around the country from the ATO sites. As Peter said, I am Jackie Curtis and I am the Chief Operating Officer here at the ATO, a role that I love and an organisation that I am privileged and proud to work for. Thank you, Peter, for that wonderful introduction. I think it's terrific that you've been able to explain to everybody here and across the country exactly what this new professional stream strategy will mean to us as an HR workforce, but also to the APS. At the heart of this, the professional stream strategy is about building capability and capacity across the whole of the APS so that we can deliver better outcomes for our organisations, but more importantly, for the Australian community. So it's truly an honour to have been asked to lead the HR professional stream. And as many of you know, I too am an HR professional. And as someone who has always worked to make sure HR is positioned as a key driver to improve the organisational outcomes that we can deliver and for people to be the best they can be, it is amazing to be able to be here today and ensure that HR is recognised as a really important value-add service to our organisations. So it's a privilege to be talking to you today. I too wanted to thank some of our special guests, Peter and Mary and the APS team, and mentioned a couple of my own people, Lena Ranieri and Kate Bairstow, who also joined them to help shape this programme. I too would like to thank my Deputy Secretary colleagues who are going to be here later today, and you'll be able to quiz them about what strategic HR means to them. And I too want to thank all of you, the hundreds of HR professionals across the country who have come out today to help us launch what is a really important programme, one which will mean so much to you because at the end of the day, it is you that have the most skin in the game, and it will take all of us to be able to change the way the HR profession is positioned. I particularly also want to acknowledge the support we have received from the very top. Secretaries and agency heads, some of us who have been able to join us today, including, as Peter said, my own boss, Chris Jordan. I'm specifically calling out this top-level support because it's one of the things that will be critical to us succeeding, as it is with any important change. So today, we are launching a program that is specifically designed to bring together, invest in, and build an expert HR workforce that's valued for its professional expertise and ability to deliver outstanding people outcomes. And I want to highlight up front the significance of HR as being established as one of the first streams, or as Peter said, the very first stream. As you know, the APS is transforming and will continue to transform faster than it ever has before. We're seeing an increased focus on emerging professions such as data and analytics, digital and design, and many other critical professions that will position us for the success of the service in the future. And let's not forget the traditional professions, such as policy and service delivery. They too will need to reinvent themselves and transform. However, what I really wanted to do is say we are the first cab off the rank. Because what we do know is that of all these professions, both emerging and established, it is HR that will have to be there to provide leadership, advice, and support so that they can make their own transformations a success. I think that just goes to show the shift in thinking that has occurred and the importance of HR, the recognition that we as a profession are able to achieve when we can demonstrate and measure the effects of our HR strategies. So today I would say we're not so much launching a strategic initiative, but perhaps more accurately, an opportunity. An opportunity which in my highest hopes will transform our profession in the following 3 ways. First, it will see us working together across our agencies and silos to collectively achieve what one person or team could not do alone. Second, it will deliver expanded opportunities to develop and advance a profession recognised for its expertise and strategic advice. We do need to rid ourselves of some old-fashioned notions that still exist in some quarters that HR is a female-dominated industry located somewhere in a back office full of helpful people. Now, we all know that's not the case, but there are still some people that say that it is. So that's something that we can all achieve together. And third, and perhaps most importantly, the HR workforce will become known as a profession that has the ability to develop, win support for, and implement people strategies. Strategies that help the APS jump the curve, position us for the future, and better serve the Australian people. Now that's pretty ambitious if you reflect on where we are as a profession today. It's not that we're not good at what we do, we are. But as the people, I think that we would be the first to admit that we can and do need to ensure that our capability is consistently high and that we are evidence-based, data-led, that we are strategic and influential, and that we have a seat at the table. But I don't want to be, as Boris Johnson would say, a gloomster or a doomster and put any negativity on today's event. The reason we are here is to launch an ambitious program that will make a difference to our profession and address some of these concerns. So I thought I would start off by telling you a story about another ambitious change, where strategic HR was at the table and where it made a huge difference to the outcomes that could be achieved. It's a story about what is possible, one which I hope will encourage and help all of us to imagine what can be possible for our profession with the right support, investment, leadership, and of course, our commitment to the profession. Now, in fact, some of you may have heard me tell this story before. I hope, though, that it will resonate with you today, and I'll try and put a slightly different angle on it. It started, like many good stories do, with a phone call back in 2013. A friend called and said, "Jackie, the ATO is looking for an experienced HR professional to lead the people function and, more importantly, to lead a massive transformational change." At the time, I thought, likely story. I mean, the ATO is more known for collecting money than its focus on people, or so it was at the time. But I did begin to believe when I got the opportunity to talk to the new commissioner, Commissioner Chris Jordan. He explained to me that the ATO was reinventing itself and how he believed that the success of that transformation depended on being people-led. He said the head of HR would lead the change and be part of the executive team. So after maybe 10 minutes or so, maybe a little less if I'm being truthful, I got on one of my machines, as you do, I sent him a text and I said, I'd like to be considered for that job. And I was lucky enough to win the role as head of people at the ATO. And I joined an executive team that valued and believed in strategic HR. And together we started to develop and invest in comprehensive strategies that have delivered significant results. And some of those strategies are HR strategies that have made a real difference. For example, we have seen a reduction in the Comcare premium from $50 million per year to less than $3 million per year, which means an extra $47 million going straight back into the business. A reduction in unplanned leave from 16.6 days to 13.3 days, which means approximately $48,000 extra days of productivity, which is equivalent to 210 FTE or $20 million. Some agencies, that's their whole budget for the year or their whole workforce. And we've been able to put that straight back into the business. And engagement scores higher than we have ever seen before, which means we have an engaged, highly productive, and hopefully very happy workforce. Needless to say, this change has been a success. And while there's still a way to go, when I look back on where we started, I think it's a testament to what dedicated and professional HR people can do when they have the expertise and the experience. This could not have been possible or have been achieved without the right top-level support, strategic direction, and skilled people with the right credentials in the right roles. And here's the thing. There are stories like this all across the APS, stories about HR delivering great results and driving better outcomes. So there's no reason why we can't all have this same kind of impact across our agencies, especially now that we have the support of the Professional Stream Programme and the sponsorship of secretaries and agency heads, because you have to have people in the top of the organisation who believe in what you do if you're going to be able to make a difference. Now, you will have noticed that throughout this presentation, I've talked about strategic HR. I just want to expand on this concept for a moment and what it means to me. My colleagues will tell you more about what it means to them when we have the panel session. So firstly, you need to understand the business needs. I don't mean that you need to be able to run the business or become an operative, although a stint in the business never hurts. At the heart of this means you need to know how your strategies and policies will impact on the ground. Because if you don't understand the operating environment of the people on which your policies will impact, even the best HR policies and theories will remain just that, strategies and policies on a page. You also need to really understand your organisation. You need to understand its culture and what makes its people tick, its priorities and its operating context, including the political context. Everything that you do should align with and take this into account. Having that deeper understanding of your staff and your business will enable you to be strategic. Think about your HR function from end to end, always keeping the end goal front of mind and taking an evidence-based approach to getting where you need to be. Doing your research and having the hard facts behind you will also make you more convincing and help you bring along staff and leaders. If you can link back to the priorities of each business area and demonstrate with insightful analysis why your approach will work, you will be convincing. And here's one of my favourites. Try to tell your story in different ways to different audiences and avoid the HR jargon. I can honestly tell you I have never been approached by a staff who's asked me about how a talent acquisition program is travelling or what's happening with the contingent workforce. That language is fine in our own circles or when we're sort of pitching something up to the top. But when you're talking to people on the ground, they want to understand how a recruitment process is going. They want to understand what's the mix between casual, non-ongoing, labour force. Human beings aren't wired for technical jargon. They relate to stories that have meaning and to which they can connect. And of course, and I've put this in here for Commissioner Jordan, of course, get the fundamentals of HR right. No one will listen to us if our strategic ideas, if we don't get the basics right. Imagine trying to get someone on board with your strategy if you haven't been able to pay them accurately. So do the basics brilliantly and be sure you are doing what you ask of others in your own backyard. I say to my people all the time in HR, if you can't do it in your space with your people, how could you ever expect anyone to follow you? And my final tip, be confident and bold in your advice. You can, of course, only do this if you have the right credentials and expertise. So now we have it, a broad invitation to show what we can do as a profession. So let's make the most of it. Now it's up to all of us to really grasp this opportunity. We can only do this together. I believe the programme and the initiatives that Peter spoke about earlier will really make a difference to our profession. So let's work together and make our move now. Thank you. I'm now just handing back over to Mary and the panel session.
So thank you very much, Jackie, and congratulations. First head of profession in the public service. It's a pretty exciting time for all of us. So I'd like to introduce our colleagues that have been helping in developing the profession over the last 6 months. And I know, because I've got a wonderful device here that's actually showing me that you've got lots of questions that we can actually ask them. So thank you very much. And thank you to everybody that's actually online using the Slido app as well. So sitting right beside me, and I'm sure she'll wave to you, is Jill Charker from the Department of Employment Skills, Small and Family Business. Then we have Neil Mason. Neil's from the Department of Agriculture. We have Justine Gregg from the Department of Defence. And on the end is Catherine Jones from Department of Finance. So, panel, are you happy to go straight to questions? Wonderful. So to start with, there's a nice one here, which is basically if you could tell the audience your views on the 3 key capabilities you expect from talented HR strategists. We might just get a couple of people to take this question. Who would like to go first?
I'm happy to, Mary.
Go, Justine.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is absolutely fantastic to have the afternoon with you. I think about this quite simply, and it is be, no, do, and I'll explain what I mean by the be, no, do. I'm not very good on the do, so I always have people around me that are good implementers. But when I say the no is understanding your organisation and really understanding how your organisation fits nationally and internationally and what those priorities are. Also within that, I think the knowing how media and social media and communication has changed what we do. In HR, you've really got to be a centrepiece in that communication. So I think it's knowing and understanding communication in that context and understanding your organisation. In the being, I think it's really being agile, and you hear that word all the time. Hopefully this afternoon I might be able to share a few examples where I think we in government have been quite agile in HR, but that agility to work across teams in your organisation and also teams within HR, that agility across the professions, whether it's workforce planning, whether it's case management, whatever it is, being agile across those teams is just vital. So I sort of call that the being. In terms of the doing, having a real understanding of implementation of HR solutions that are simple, but always having that evaluation built in, because I think more and more we've got to try things at an earlier point in time, and really having an understanding of what those ideas and those solutions might bring, and evaluate as you go. So that's how I describe the three things that I see as really critical to that strategic HR.
Thank you very much. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in.
Yeah, I'm just building on
Jill,
that. Yeah, I think just building on that, I think the knowledge of the business, really deep knowledge of the organisation that you're in is really critical. Jackie touched on it in her comments as well, but I think without deeply understanding where your organisation is at and what it genuinely needs at this point in time is incredibly important, I think, for HR strategists in terms of then avoiding a one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach to what we do. So I think that's fundamental. But I would add too, I just think an inherently well-developed problem-solving ability. So certainly, as Jackie indicated, there's a level of sort of BAU HR services, which I think is almost a hurdle requirement for us to be able to claim that we deliver hopefully reasonably effectively, hopefully most of the time. But the problems for which our advice is most often sought and often valued are problems which the business area is struggling with, and they can manifest in terms of capability, in terms of retention, in terms of some particularly sensitive matter. And so I think being able to bring that problem-solving focus to bear, which inherently is what people are looking for from HR, is incredibly important.
Terrific.
Mary,
Thank
can
you.
I add one more?
You
It's
can.
okay. And I think it applies right across the board for us as public servants, but it's courage. In HR, we see lots of the good and we see lots of the challenge in the organisations we work with. And it's really important for us at any level within our profession to really make sure that we are calling things as we see them, and importantly then working with business areas and managers to help work through them. So I'd encourage you, when you see things that are great, embrace them. When you see things that don't look quite right, then you should be asking some questions around, what is that? Let's be a bit curious about that. Let's think a bit about that, and work with our business areas to really understand how we can actually work out what's happening behind the scenes, and a way that we can add value to making it better.
Terrific. Thank you very much. So I've got a very popular question here that's just come through, and it's is this going to be the start of the first of many joint recruitment opportunities through the APS? And I might throw to Catherine on this one. Is that all right?
Thanks, Mary. Well, I think I'm probably talking on behalf of everyone to say, hope so. I think it's a great starting point to do the joint graduate HR process. But I think the era has come where we just have to be so much more joined up and strategic around thinking about APS capability as a whole, not that we have a whole lot of individual discrete organisations. There is so much commonality in terms of what we need. I would love us to take the big leap almost immediately and do a whole of APS graduate process, not just HR graduate process. When you hear about the experience of people who apply through 8, 10, 12 different processes and have to write 8, 10, 12 applications and front up to interviews, what other organisation of 160,000 people would put people through that? So I think that time has come, and I think the more that we start approaching our workforce from this professional stream perspective, which I think is such a great development, we'll think about pooling our resources and having a much more whole of service strategic approach. And that's where HR has such a fantastic role to play in terms of being able to support those processes and assist areas that sometimes can get a little bit too focused on narrow technical skills, which are necessary. We need data specialists, we need digital specialists, but we also need people who are going to evolve into good leaders and good general problem solvers. And I think HR specialists can really help us better develop and identify those skills.
Well done. That's good. And we are actually looking at what we can do in terms of being one APS and seeing if we can streamline what we do together. So I think through the Secretary's Board, they've already asked the APSC, working with other agencies, to see if we can actually just streamline some of the back-end processes for all the grad programs. So an applicant, instead of what Catherine was just talking about, having to apply for 20 departments, go through multiple rounds, they only will have to apply once. It still gives each agency the ability to select who they need, but if we can actually streamline it for people coming into the service, then we want to be able to do that. So I might move on to the next question, and it's another one that's very popular, and it's related really to the first question that we had. And we've got a lot of staff here that are asking about what's the balance for HR professionals between deep HR expertise and knowledge of the business. They're all nodding. Who wants to go first?
I don't mind. I'm first.
That's yours.
The strong theme that I see that works here is thinking about the balance in the team rather than in the individual. So an individual may have a lot of business experience, less HR, or a lot of HR, very little understanding of the business and who we're delivering our strategy and services to. I tend to recommend we must look at the team, and we need a combination of those. It is much more effective if there are people in your HR team that have worked in the business, because they, of course, understand what's needed. And I think the great example there is when we are trying to integrate advice, so whether it's strategic workforce planning or whether we are trying to come up with a solution for various sort of complex case management issues, the person that's worked in the business is actually very good at seeing how best the integrated advice can be received. So my view there is balance in the team, and I, for one, I'm always actively looking to bring people in who are not HR professionals, but rather complement the skills that we've got.
Okay, terrific.
Happy for me to weigh in?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So for me, and I think our new head of profession put this particularly well, you need to understand the business that you're in, and you need to understand the business you're in as a HR professional, provide advice. Does it mean I need to have spent 10 years in the business to do that? Probably not, because what I'm bringing is a professional level expertise to that conversation in a way that's got to add value to the business. The two of us together are going to work out how to transform a business process. I'm not going to do that from the sidelines, and generally HR add value when we join the business to do that. I think the challenge is that we don't spend enough time at the beginning talking together about how to do that. We tend to jump into something and then we give advice, or we tend to give advice and then we jump into something, rather than, I think, the term we used earlier around designing something together. HR will bring a lot to the table if we're at the table. To get to the table, you need to get the basics right, and I couldn't agree more to that. So from my point of view, all the HR folk that I work with every day know that we've got to spend time in the business, we've got to understand how the bits work, and then we've actually got to think about how we bring value to that, rather than saying it's one or the other.
Terrific. So we have another question. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add one thing to that that underlines the challenge, because we talk about the business as if each organisation has one line of business. Most of our organisations are incredibly varied. My organisation, the Department of Finance, I know a lot of people think it's just the budget, but that's actually the smallest part of the organisation. We do service delivery. We do service delivery to parliamentarians. We do whole of government procurement processes. The mix of skills and the mix of needs that our organisation have is really broad, and I need our HR capability to understand that broad mix, and I would suspect that that's the same for many organisations. So it's about being able to acquire an understanding of the department or the organisation and all its different responsibilities and deliver for it, as opposed to having a sort of a very intricate understanding of particular lines of business in an organisation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And I've always found, so I've moved in my career, I've moved in and out of HR all the time, into policy, into program, and I believe that it makes me better in terms of my role in HR, because you do understand the business and you understand the complexity of different agencies and the work that we do in serving the government and the communities of Australia. So moving on to the next question. This one, it's an interesting one. I'll have hands up on who would like to answer it instead of allocating it to you. But could you tell us about a time when you saw bad HR or no HR in action?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick that.
That's right. Jill, go.
Not because I have a plethora of examples to draw on, but I have one or two that stick, and certainly not naming agencies, places or anything. I would just observe at a place I've worked in my career, and like Mary, I've worked in a number of places, so this organisation remains unidentifiable. There was a reasonably significant internal transformation program going on, which you could characterise like many transformation programs many of us are familiar with. So changes to IT systems, changes to processes that staff had to engage with, both with our ultimate clients as well as with IT systems. And I suppose underpinning all of that, a change to culture and values and what we're looking for and wanted to move to. And what I observed here was actually HR nowhere to be seen. So the core things that were changing were how the humans in the department or the agency, without naming, interacted with the technology, interacted with the clients and end customers, interacted with each other to get to that point. And yet HR was not even in the discussions. HR was very much relegated to the transactional. They'll process pays, we hope, as I said earlier, correctly. But in terms of that strategic capability and getting in early to say, look, we're actually talking about a big shift in skills here, in capabilities, in how we reward people, in how we train people and in whom we recruit, those discussions were not being led by HR. And so HR in that instance was actually AWOL, I would suggest, and so past the remnant of even being bad, actually not at present, which to me was a real shame. And so the HR gap that was created was being picked up to some extent by the transformation lead area. And they were trying to do HR as well as do all the other stuff that was part of that transformation and struggling. And so I think for me, when you see big changes, big disruptions, and there's roles for HR in many other places too, one hopes that HR recognises the core common element, which is often the people in the organisation. And you're often asking them to do something different, something new, to be rewarded for something that maybe historically they've not been. It hasn't been a focus. And so thinking up front really early and engaging as an HR practitioner or strategist really early with the area that's driving the change, I think is incredibly important and a wonderful opportunity and a great loss, of course, too, when we don't engage in that way.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Okay, Catherine, you've got one to share too.
Well, I actually want to just respond slightly differently and not so much bad HR, because I've got to say the HR capability we've got in our organisation is absolutely fantastic. But bad expectations of HR. And that is when I think the senior leadership of the organisation all leaders all the way through the organisation abrogate their own responsibility around culture, around people, and HR is seen to be just mopping up the mess around the organisation. So I think from my perspective, as it's much about all of us as part of the senior leadership to be setting the right expectations for HR, really underlying their contribution to the strategic, to the culture, to the capability, and not necessarily spending most of their time doing case management or because people aren't taking responsibility in their own work areas.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. Well done. All right, we have a very popular question. It's an anonymous one, and it seems to have got lots of votes. How do we grow HR expertise broadly across the breadth of the APS when the EVP of some agencies may not be as attractive as others? So this goes back to how we actually work together in a whole of government way.
I mean, I suspect some of what the Commissioner and the Head of Profession have touched on goes very much to that point. I think there's that recognition emerging more strongly that this is a shared asset, if you like, of skill, that we fragment and we scatter and we don't connect groups of folk with those skills to our detriment. And so I think in some respects, it's almost the subtext of the professional stream or the strategy that is obviously being launched today is about trying to get more connection through various informal and formal mechanisms. One of the more formal mechanisms, though, being that mobility piece. So recognising that the movement of HR professions across the HR staff, across the APS is a core part to trying to grow that capability, and also developing a more structured approach to the recruitment and the training of HR professionals. So I think Jackie touched earlier, or it might have been the Commissioner, I apologise, I can't recall, on certification. And certification of HR professionals as being as an optional but highly valued way to systematically boost the capability of HR, of folk who would like to say that they are practising HR professionals. So I actually think the whole point in some respects of today, it's a great question, is exactly to that point about building the capability across the service, not just in a fragmented manner.
Couldn't agree more.
I mean, how exciting is it that we've got about 1,100 people on today? I mean, I don't know, I'm guessing a good portion of you HR professionals, some of you won't be, so fantastic. We've got lots of business people here today, but I think, to have 1,100 people in a profession all taking the time to actually acknowledge that we are a profession, we're in the APS, we're going to make a difference. I think the levers are all here. I'm incredibly excited about that, and really excited to be a part of that. So for anyone who's sort of thinking, I'm not quite sure, here's the opportunity. We've just seen some tools that I think are going live today, where you'll be able to get straight in and start finding and connecting with people within the profession. There'll be some professional things happening for us all over the next sort of 12 months, which I'm pretty excited about. And I think collectively it's 1,100. We can make it what we want it to be. We really can. We've got the authorising environment. I think it's really within our hands. It's terrific.
Okay. Well said, Neil. That was good. We are all here and we can do it. We can actually change the culture and we can focus on the profession. And I should mention the reference group, not everybody's here, we've got 2 people missing, but our wonderful people that are on stage, and Jackie, they made today happen. So no one said you have permission. They decided that we have a need within the public service and we want to do something about it for the good of the service and for HR profession because it means something to us. So we are all committed, and thanks for reminding us, Neil. Because that's why we're here.
I just get very excited.
At a whole of government level. So I'm just going to another couple of questions that are quite popular. We have one person that actually wasn't anonymous, and he's Nick, who's asked a question, and he's got 25 thumbs up. So we might actually put a thumbs up to Nick and actually ask this one. So Nick has asked, what is our role as HR professionals in getting the culture of the organisations right, or guiding the culture of the organisation?
This is probably my favourite topic, so I'll go there. Thanks, Nick. That's an excellent question. Our role in culture is very much to help the organisation understand it. And for many organisations, I think we rely on surveys quite heavily, and as HR professionals today, we need to broaden our thinking there. It's certainly about talking to people in the organisation, but there's also other sources today that we didn't have before. So there's a lot of communication on a daily basis across government, in your own organisation, and in understanding the culture, I think we need to really excel in our methods and how we understand what's going on. So I would say that's point 1. Point 2 is understanding what are the levers. I think you mentioned, Catherine, earlier that culture is complex. So I come from an organisation at the moment that is very complex in terms of the number of subcultures and how people work, what the organisational climate is. And the levers in those environments are different. So again, it's understanding that specific context you're working in. Then as part of the leadership team and as part of other teams, it really is working together to then identify what are the levers that we might pull. And those levers may be different depending on where you are. So I see in some, the HR role is actually highly critical to that.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment as well. I think HR working in partnership with the business can consciously co-create a culture that we want to see. And often I think we talk about culture as being a sort of an end product, a reactive thing that comes out of what we do. And I think we tend to talk a little bit less about opportunities to design a culture that we want to see, and as Justine said, what the levers are to effect that. And I think HR has an enormous capacity to, again, embed in the business thinking of what the organisation wants to achieve from a business point of view, which is fundamental here, to then say, right, if that's what the business wants to achieve and that's what our customers, clients, our stakeholders want us to look like, how does that translate into our practices internally? What sorts of behaviours should we be seeing? What sorts of behaviours and practices should we be rewarding? And immediately you can start to see links to our reward and performance management systems. You can see links to what we train people in. And all of those things are a statement of the sort of culture, in a sense, that we think we're trying to achieve. And sometimes we do that consciously, and sometimes we do that less consciously. And I think HR has got a wonderful vantage point and a set of tools at its disposal that can be put into motion to support a very conscious design of a culture that the organisation, the business, wants to see.
Yeah, we can change the incentives, working with the executive to actually change some of the behaviours that you see. That's good. All right, last question. And this one's really, Neil, you'll be happy about this question, I think. So males are underrepresented in some HR functions. So what are effective approaches to ensure gender balance for the public service as we move forward in HR?
Does that mean I get to
You don't have to answer it.
Okay.
I think that your three colleagues
maybe
can
my
answer
colleagues
that one.
need to answer the question. I'll chip in at the end if you like.
I mean, I think one of the things is how you value the profession and the importance of it in your institutions. And I think this initiative of developing the professional stream is a really good step in the right direction. I think the more we think about HR as a key capability to grow organisations or help organisations really deliver on their outcomes, and less about that problem-solving thing that I was talking about earlier on, I think that will assist. But I think consciously thinking that it is good to try and achieve greater gender equity and be a bit proactive about that. I've worked in areas in government, and Justine will be able to talk about this, but I've worked in areas of government where there's significant gender disparity, and that was in the national security space. And you certainly get a different perspective and different outcomes when you have a significant balance one way or the other. So I think this is a really great starting point, really strongly promoting the profession, strongly building capabilities and having programs in place to do that is a fantastic step in the right direction.
Great.
I think it comes down to diversity in any profession is a healthy thing. So diversity, however you define it. And I've seen over the last 25 years actually big shifts in diversity in HR. So a lot of people have come in from other professions. So I think my view on that one is growing the diversity and building on the diversity that's starting to appear. Yeah.
I think part of it's also being able to educate and influence our wider colleagues so that they know exactly what happens in HR. Because I do think that Jackie's comment's right. It's the women out the back doing some admin work. We're not good at selling ourselves in HR. We're not good at explaining what we do, and we're not good at actually talking about how valuable we are to the business and how we can make things happen. You've heard some great examples from my colleagues here talking about how effective HR can be in actually driving business outcomes, changing incentives, and really focusing on how we actually deliver. So I'm going to end there. And would you please join me in thanking everybody on the panel. So Catherine, Jill, Neil, and Justine. Thank you. And thank you to everybody that's actually put in all of their questions into Slido. There's many more questions here that we don't have time today to go through and answer. But what we might do is we can get together as a group and we can answer these questions for you and actually put them back out into the GovDeck site so that you do get an answer from us. Does that sound all right, everyone, if we do that? They're all nodding. So that's good. All right, so thank you for everyone's input today. Thanks for your views and thanks for your different perspectives and also your engagement. To you here in Canberra, you will have the opportunity to continue to network with the reference group who've kindly offered us some more of their time to actually meet with you outside and after our formalities conclude. I think there might be afternoon tea out there which is supplied, so thank you very much to ATO for assisting us and supplying that. Thanks also to Peter and to Jackie and to the reference group members for their personal insights today. And really a special mention to our colleagues in the ATO for hosting this event and for access to their experts who have helped make today really happen. Events like this just don't happen overnight. They involve a lot of behind-the-scenes planning and coordination, and it's amazing to see it all come together so perfectly today. So thank you to everyone involved in today's network meeting. I'd also like to just briefly acknowledge the team, the engine room that made it all happen today. So we had a small group of staff from across the APS working very closely with the reference group to make it all happen. So thank you. I think they're all standing up the back there, but thank you to Lena Ranieri and Kate Bairstow from the ATO. To Nadia Cooper from Defence. And Alana Keogh and Fiona Nielsen from the APSC. Thank you to you all. So as I mentioned at the beginning of today's event, today is really all about you, HR professionals in the Australian Public Service. We've now reserved some time for you to have an opportunity to network and to get to know your colleagues and to talk about what you just heard in today's event. So afternoon tea is provided in all localities for you to be able to do that. So please take some time. Don't rush back to work straight away. Get to know your colleagues and talk about what it means to have a HR profession. Thank you again for joining us today. This is just the start of many conversations to come. Thank you.